The First Throne, a story written and illustrated by Timberpin. Voiced by artificial intelligence, for your listening pleasure. When a member of the Archivist Order ascends to the rank of Throne, the highest possible rank, tradition dictates they remove their name, not only from personal use, but from all records. From that point forward, they are known solely by the number assigned upon their ascent and their rank. Therefore, for the duration of this story, we shall refer to our main character as the First Throne. We open on a dimly lit, opulent room, but one that feels cold and dangerous. Young First Throne, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, sits on a large, ornately carved chair, his small legs dangling above the floor. He's dressed in fine clothes, but they seem too formal, too restrictive for a child. His eyes, though young, hold an unsettling intensity. His father, a large, imposing man with a cruel face and sharp eyes, stands before him. The father is interrogating another man who is bound and kneeling on the cold stone floor. The kneeling man is disheveled, his face bruised and swollen, his eyes wide with terror. Action. The father paces, his voice a low, menacing growl. He gestures towards the bound man, then turns to his son. "Son," he says, his voice deceptively gentle, "what do you think I should do with this man? This man who has stolen from me refuses to pay back on an agreement that we had made." The young First Throne looks at the bound man, his expression unreadable. He pauses, considering. "I want to let him go," he says, his voice surprisingly calm. "That would be the nice thing to do." The father chuckles, a low, humorless sound. "That's right, son. That would certainly be nice. But then who else would come and take our money and refuse to pay us back? Wouldn't that show weakness?" The young First Throne nods, his eyes still fixed on the bound man. "Yeah," he says softly. He thinks for a moment, then his eyes light up with a chillingly clever idea. "We could bury him in a hole, but then he wouldn't pay us anything back." The father pats his son on the back, a predatory smile spreading across his face. "That's right, son. Dead men pay no debts, so we need something in between. What do you think we should do?" The bound man's eyes widen in horror as he realizes the child is participating in his torment. The young First Throne's face lights up. "I got it, Daddy," he exclaims. "We have our surgery guy. Let's have him put something inside the man, something illegal. That way he can't go to the police or get it removed himself, and he'll have to pay us back to have our surgery guy remove it from him. No other family surgery guy will remove it out of respect for us. Let's make it a bomb, Daddy." The father's face lights up with pride. He turns to his men, who are watching with a mixture of amusement and unease. "Do you see that?" he says, his voice laced with dark satisfaction. "Look at how clever my boy is." "And he's trying so hard to make his father proud. That's truly a clever and somewhat twisted thing to do, my son. So let's do it." As the men drag the screaming, pleading bound man away towards a dimly lit door marked Surgery, the young First Throne watches, his expression devoid of emotion. We transition to a grand, opulent office filled with expensive furniture and technology. The First Throne, now in his early 20s, sits behind a large, imposing desk. He's dressed in sharp, tailored clothing, but his eyes retain the same unsettling intensity from his childhood. He exudes power and control, but there's a slight air of impatience and perhaps even a hint of insecurity. Around him, men and women move with a sense of urgency, delivering reports and carrying out orders. Holographic displays flicker with data, showing schematics for drug manufacturing, weapon distribution, and political strategies. He looks younger than his position should warrant. The First Throne is in his element, barking orders with a sharp, authoritative voice. He effortlessly switches between complex financial reports, detailed manufacturing processes, and intricate political maneuverings. He understands every aspect of his criminal empire, from the smallest detail to the grandest strategy. He rubs his temples, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. "This is all happening too soon," he mutters to himself. One of his advisors, a middle-aged man with a worried expression, approaches. "Sir," he says, "there's a problem with the sex trafficking operation. It's not taking off." The First Throne's brow furrows. Not taking off? He asks, his voice dangerously low. Explain. Well, sir, the advisor stammers. Every time we try to set up a ring, the merchandise disappears. And the people running it, they just give up. They say there's no money in it. The first throne stares at him, his eyes narrowing. Disappears? What do you mean, disappears? We don't know, sir, the advisor says, his voice trembling. It's like they vanish into thin air. People are saying, they're saying it's the archivists. The first throne scoffs. The archivists? Those bookworms? What could they possibly have to do with this? They run that cathedral, sir, the advisor says, pointing towards a large, imposing structure visible through the office window. People say they're the reason the sex trafficking industry has never been able to flourish. The first throne looks at the cathedral, his eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. The archivists? He says, his voice laced with intrigue. I want to know more about them. I want to know everything, and find out why they are interfering with my business. He then pauses, leaning back in his chair, and the camera focuses on his hand, as he absent-mindedly fiddles with a small, ornate bottle of expensive liquor. And how is my father? He asks, his voice tight. He is failing, sir, the advisor says, his voice low. The liver disease is progressing. The doctors say he won't be returning to work. The first throne's jaw clenches. Then I will have to handle everything, he says, his voice hard. And those who look down on me because of my age, they will learn to regret it. The first throne's sleek black vehicle pulls up to the imposing archivist cathedral. The building is a massive, Gothic structure, its dark stone contrasting sharply with the neon-lit cityscape. It appears ancient and powerful, a stark contrast to the first throne's modern, technological world. The first throne steps out of the car, followed by several heavily armed bodyguards. He's dressed in his usual expensive attire, but his face is grim, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. As they approach the massive, ornate doors of the cathedral, they swing open with a silent, almost supernatural grace. Standing before them are several archivist knights, tall, imposing figures clad in gleaming, silver armor. They wield swords that seem to hum with energy and strange, projectile-launching weapons that look both ancient and futuristic. The knights regard the first throne and his entourage for a moment, their faces impassive. Then one of them steps forward, his voice surprisingly gentle. First throne, he says, using the first throne's given name, a name rarely spoken aloud. Welcome, those who seek truth and clarity are always welcome within these walls. The first throne raises an eyebrow, surprised. You know my name? He asks, his voice cautious. We know many things, the knight replies cryptically. Enter. Seek the answers you desire. The knights part, allowing the first throne and his bodyguards to enter the cathedral. The interior is vast and awe-inspiring, a massive library filled with countless books and tomes. Strange figures, the archivists, move silently through the halls, some reading, others kneeling in prayer. The air is thick with the scent of old paper and incense. The first throne surveys the scene, his usual arrogance replaced by a sense of unease. He's out of his element here, surrounded by something he doesn't understand. He spends some time wandering through the library, his bodyguards trailing behind him. Eventually, he spots a figure that catches his eye, a woman covered head to toe in a strange, secondary latex skin suit. The suit is black and form-fitting, and it completely obscures her features. He approaches her cautiously. What is that? He asks, gesturing towards the suit. The woman turns to him, her voice muffled by the suit. This is a symbiotic suit, she explains. It enhances our senses, allowing us to observe the world with greater clarity and without bias. And why do you all wear them? The first throne asks, his curiosity piqued. It is our way, she replies. We seek truth, and truth requires objectivity. The suit allows us to shed our individual identities and become instruments of observation. The first throne considers this, his mind racing. He realizes that these people are unlike anyone he's ever encountered. They operate on a different set of principles, driven by a desire for knowledge and understanding, not power and control. He thinks of his own desires and the questions that brought him here. I have a question, he says, his voice hesitant. A question about human needs, the woman nods, her faceless gaze fixed on him. Ask, she says. We see the first throne and the faceless nun walking through a quieter, more secluded part of the archivist cathedral. The ornate, high-ceilinged hallways are dimly lit, creating an atmosphere of mystery and quiet contemplation. They enter a large, open chamber. In the center of the chamber rests a massive, unbound book, its pages loose and seemingly shifting on their own. The book emanates a faint, ethereal glow. This is the Book of Prophecies. The nun gestures towards the book. This is the Book of Prophecies, she says, her voice still muffled by the suit. It contains visions and insights into the past, present, and future. The first throne stares at the book, his expression skeptical. Prophecies? You expect me to believe in this? This superstition? Believe what you will, the nun replies calmly. But it has been known to offer clarity to those who seek it. Clarity, the first throne scoffs. I need answers, not riddles. Perhaps the answers you seek are within its pages, the nun says, gesturing towards the book. Take a page, take it home with you. It may provide you with the answers you seek. The first throne hesitates, then, with a shrug, he walks towards the book. He carefully removes a single page, its surface smooth and cool to the touch. He glances at it, his eyes widening slightly. The page depicts a scene, a detailed description of a room, a painting on the wall, and the subtle movements of figures within the space. It also contains a warning. An assassination attempt will come. Be wary of the painting. The first throne dismisses it as nonsense, but he feels a prickle of unease. He folds the page and tucks it into his jacket pocket. We then cut to a montage of the first throne's life over the next few days. He becomes increasingly ruthless and cruel, his paranoia growing. He ignores the prophecy, but events begin to align with the details on the page. A news report mentions a specific painting, the one described in the prophecy. One day, while in a large meeting room, he notices the painting. He suddenly ducks, falling to the floor. A high-powered bullet meant to penetrate his chest whizzes past him, striking one of his guards instead. The first throne stares at the dead guard, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The prophecy was real. He returns to the archivist cathedral, his anger and fear palpable. He demands answers, but the nuns remain calm and evasive. The book is public property, one of them says. Anyone can take a page. You're free to take as many as you wish. He demands to know how they predict the future, but they offer no explanation. Instead, he takes another page, desperate for answers. This page reveals intimate details about his past, moments shared only with his father. It also foretells another assassination attempt. The first throne is shaken. He realizes he cannot dismiss the prophecies as superstition. He's now trapped, forced to rely on their cryptic warnings to survive. We see the first throne, now more guarded and paranoid, visiting his father. The father is in a lavish but sterile room, hooked up to medical equipment. He looks frail, but there's a spark of his old authority and a deep sadness in his eyes. The first throne, still clutching the new prophecy page, tries to increase the security around his father. He's become obsessed with preventing the prophecy from coming true. "Father," he says, his voice strained. "We need to be more careful. There are threats. I know you don't believe me, but..." The father looks at him, a mixture of pity and disappointment in his eyes. "Threats. Son, you are the threat. You've become a liability, a loose cannon." The first throne's brow furrows. "What are you talking about? I'm protecting you!" Suddenly, there's a loud bang. A shot rings out. The first throne looks down in shock. He's been shot in the chest. His father is holding a heavy caliber pistol, his hand trembling slightly. "I'm sorry, son," he says, his voice choked with emotion. "It had to be this way." The first throne falls to the floor, blood pooling around him. He stares up at his father, his eyes filled with betrayal and confusion. "The family, they decided," the father continues, his voice cracking. "Your methods, they're sloppy. You hurt innocents. You draw too much attention. This isn't how we operate. We're supposed to be shadows, son, not a wildfire." He takes a deep, shuddering breath. "I taught you better. I tried to instill some restraint, some finesse. But you disregarded it. You only disappointed me once, boy. Only once. But in this business, that's enough." The father's gaze hardens. To regain control, to ensure the family's survival, "I had to do this." The first throne, despite his pain, manages to grab a heavy, decorative fireplace poker. With a surge of rage and hatred, fueled by betrayal and the sting of his father's words, he swings it at his father. The scene cuts to a close-up of the first throne's face, contorted in grief and fury. He stands over his father's broken body, the poker dripping with blood. He stumbles back, his eyes wide with horror. He's killed his own father. The first throne looks around the room, his eyes filled with a terrifying realization. He's lost everything: his father, his empire, his sense of control. He grabs his father's gun and fights his way out of the room, killing 3 of his own guards in the process. He disappears into the night, a broken and hunted man. We see the first throne, now disheveled and wounded, moving through the dark, grimy underbelly of the city. He's shed his expensive clothing and wears tattered rags, trying to blend in with the desperate and forgotten. His face is hidden beneath a dirty cap and a makeshift bandage. He stumbles through narrow alleyways, avoiding the main thoroughfares. He's clearly injured and exhausted, but his eyes are filled with a desperate determination. He's a hunted animal, seeking any place to hide. He eventually finds himself in front of a rundown building with a faded sign. Rehabilitation Center. The building looks neglected, but there's a faint light emanating from within. He hesitates, then enters. Inside, the center is dimly lit and crowded with people in various states of distress. There are addicts, homeless people, and those seeking refuge from the harsh realities of the city. He blends in with the crowd, trying to remain unnoticed. He spots a woman in a simple, unassuming outfit, helping a man with shaking hands. She moves with a quiet grace and empathy. He recognizes her. It's the nun from the Archivist Cathedral. Despite his disguise, she recognizes him immediately. Her expression remains calm and gentle. She approaches him, her voice low and soothing. "You are welcome here," she says. "But you should return to the cathedral. It is safe there." The first throne is wary. "Safe?" he asks, his voice hoarse. "They want me dead?" "Not here," she replies. "The archivists protect those who seek sanctuary." He hesitates, then nods. He's desperate, and he knows he can't survive on his own. Later, he's back in the Archivist Cathedral, its grandeur a stark contrast to the squalor he just left. He's cleaned up, but his eyes are still haunted. He approaches the Book of Prophecies, his expression filled with a mix of fear and resignation. He takes another page. The page depicts a scene, a news article detailing his death and disappearance. It also shows a forensic scene, with DNA evidence of a struggle alongside his father's body. The first throne stares at the page, his face pale. He realizes that his fate is sealed. He's already dead in the eyes of the world. But there's something else on the page. A strange depiction of a somber figure, clad in dark clothing, walking away from a desolate land, carrying a massive 2-handed sword. He doesn't understand the image, but he feels a sense of foreboding. Suddenly, the light in the chamber is obscured. He looks up. 4 massive, angelic wings fill his vision. Vaticinia Day, or Vicky, as she prefers to be called, floats down from a balcony, her youthful face filled with concern. She lands gracefully before him. "You're in trouble," she says, her voice gentle. "But you're safe here. Come with me." We transition to a private chamber within the Archivist Cathedral. It's a surprisingly warm and inviting space, decorated with soft fabrics and comfortable cushions. The first throne sits on a large, low bed, looking dazed and disoriented. Around him are several figures, both male and female, clad in the faceless latex suits of the archivist nuns and monks. They move with a gentle, almost ethereal grace. The first throne looks around, his eyes filled with disbelief. He's clearly overwhelmed by the scene. He's never experienced such warmth and acceptance. Vaticinia Day, Vicky, sits beside him, her youthful face filled with concern. She rests a hand on his arm, her touch surprisingly gentle. "You're safe here," she says, her voice soft. "We won't let anyone hurt you." The first throne looks at her, his voice hoarse. "Why?" he asks. "Why are you doing this?" "Because," she says simply, "I foresaw that I would enjoy your company." The first throne stares at her, his eyes filled with confusion. He's never encountered such a simple, direct explanation. You're the deity," he says, his voice trembling slightly. "Call me Vicky," she replies with a gentle smile. "All that religious stuff. It's not really my thing." She gestures towards the other figures in the room. "We're just having a quiet moment. Tea, some baked goods. You know, the usual." The first throne looks at the tea and baked goods, then back at Vicky. He's completely bewildered. I don't understand," he says. "Why are you being so kind to me? I've done terrible things." "Everyone makes mistakes," she replies, her voice gentle. "But you're here now? That's what matters." The first throne's eyes fill with tears. He's never experienced such unconditional acceptance. He spent his entire life surrounded by violence and betrayal. This warmth, this kindness. It's overwhelming. He reaches out and takes her hand, his touch hesitant. "Thank you," he whispers. "You're welcome," she says, her smile warm and genuine. The scene shifts to a close-up of the first throne's face. We see a flicker of change in his eyes, a softening of his hardened features. He's beginning to heal. We see the first throne spending time within the Archivist Cathedral. The environment is one of quiet contemplation and dedicated study. He observes the archivists as they work, trying to understand their ways. He's still wearing the faceless latex suit, blending in with the others, but there's a sense of unease in his posture. He attempts to learn their rituals, to understand their dedication to knowledge and service, but he feels a deep sense of unworthiness. He sees their genuine compassion and their unwavering commitment to their ideals, and he feels like an outsider, a stain on their purity. We see him studying the Book of Prophecies, trying to decipher its cryptic messages. He's drawn to its power, but he also fears it. One day, he overhears a conversation between two archivists. They're discussing the dangers of the symbiotic suits, the risk of the control chip failing and the suit permanently grafting to the wearer's body, slowly consuming them. He's horrified by the description, the idea of losing one's identity and individuality. He remembers the prophecy, the vision of the somber figure leaving a desolate land. He realizes that he's still trapped, still bound to his past. He needs to break free, to become something new. He makes a decision. He reaches up and breaks the control chip on the back of his neck. There's a jolt of pain, a wave of disorientation. He stumbles, but he remains standing. He knows what he's done. He's sealed his fate. The scene shifts to a montage. We see the first throne undergoing a transformation. The armor he wears fuses with the symbiotic suit, becoming a permanent part of his body. Data storage drives and synthetic muscle tissue are integrated into the armor, enhancing his strength and abilities. He commissions an author within the archivists to write down the Covenant of the Throne, a document outlining the duties and responsibilities of the first throne, the protector of the deity. He dedicates himself to serving Vicky, to protecting her and her followers. We see him standing before the assembled archivists, his voice strong and resolute. He's no longer the ruthless criminal, but a figure of authority and purpose. "I am the First Throne," he declares, "and I vow to serve and protect. I will be the shield that guards the archivists and the sword that defends our knowledge." We open on a bustling urban street, a stark contrast to the quiet serenity of the Archivist Cathedral. People are hurrying about their daily lives, their faces etched with weariness and determination. They are focused on their own struggles, oblivious to the drama unfolding nearby. On the edge of the street, amidst the grime and the throng of passers-by, sits a young man. He's disheveled and thin, his eyes filled with a desperate, lost look. He clutches a worn sign that reads, "Give me food, not money. I'll just spend it on drugs." He rocks back and forth, clearly suffering from withdrawal, his body trembling. Across the street, the imposing facade of the Vatican's Archivist Cathedral looms, a place of sanctuary and healing. Its massive, rarely opened main doors stand closed, a stark contrast to the smaller, more frequently used side entrances. Suddenly, the massive doors of the cathedral swing open with a resounding thrum, drawing the attention of the surrounding crowd. A figure emerges, a towering 9-foot-tall man, clad in heavy, fused symbiotic armor. The armor is dark and imposing, its surface reflecting the harsh urban light. A massive, two-handed sword is strapped to his side, adding to his formidable presence. This is the First Throne. He walks slowly, deliberately, his movements carrying an almost ominous weight. He crosses the street, his shadow falling over the young man sitting on the curb. The young man looks up, his eyes widening in fear. The First Throne's towering figure and armored form create an intimidating presence. From the young man's perspective, it appears as though the First Throne is looking down at him with anger and judgment, like a stern, disapproving father. However, the reality is far different. The First Throne is bowing slightly, his head lowered, his faceless gaze filled with an unexpected sadness. Tears are welling up within his unseen eyes. He places a bundle of food and drink on the ground before the young man. His heavy, armored hand reaches out and gently rests on the young man's shoulder. "You deserve better than what you give yourself," he says, his voice low and resonant. His words are simple, but they carry a weight of sincerity and regret. The First Throne believes himself unworthy of the food he offers, unworthy of the young man's company, and unworthy of his place within the archivist community. He stands up, turning away from the squalor of the city, the place where his criminal empire once thrived. He walks back towards the cathedral, his two-handed sword swinging at his side. He returns to his role as the First Throne, the protector of the deity, fulfilling the mysterious vision depicted on the prophecy page. The end of the First Throne. Thank you all so much for listening. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And definitely let me know in the comments below if you prefer the AI-generated voice for the narration, or if you'd prefer me to narrate my own work myself. Both options have significant drawbacks and are somewhat time-consuming to produce properly, but each also comes with its own perks. Let me know what you prefer, and I'll see what I can do in the future. For now, I'll have to say goodbye.